Vanishing folklore and beliefs. The Temple to the God of War. Korean Folktales, public domain reading, circa 1914. The Temple to the God of War. Yi Hang-bok, when he was a child, a blind fortune-teller came and cast his future, saying, "This boy will be very great indeed." At 7 years of age, his father gave him for subject to write a verse on the harp and the sword, and he wrote, "The sword pertains to the hand of the warrior, and the harp to the music of the ancients." At 8 years old, he took the subject of the willow before the door and wrote, "The east wind brushes the brow of the cliff, and the willow on the edge nods fresh and green." On seeing a picture of a great banquet among the fierce Turks of Central Asia, he wrote thus, "The hunt is off in the wild dark hills, and the moon is cold and grey, while the tramping feet of 1,000 horse ring on the frosty way. In the tents of the Turk the music thrills, and the wine cups chink for joy. Mid the noise of the dancer's savage tread, and the lilt of the wild hautboy." At 12 years of age, he was a proud and haughty boy. He dressed well and was envied by the poorer lads of the palace. And once he took off his coat and gave it to a boy who looked with envy on him. He gave his shoes as well and came back barefoot. His mother, wishing to know his mind in the matter, pretended to reprimand him, but he replied, saying, "Mother, when others wanted it so, how could I refuse giving?" His mother pondered these things in her heart. When he was 15 years old, he was strong and well built, and liked vigorous exercise, so that he was a noted wrestler and skillful at shuttlecock. His mother, however, frowned upon these things, saying that they were not dignified, so that he gave them up and confined his attention to literary studies, graduating at 25 years of age. In 1592, during the Japanese War, when the king escaped to Uiju, Yi Hang-bok went with him in his flight, and there he met the Chinese Ming representative, who said in surprise to his majesty, "Do you mean to tell me that you have men in Chosen like Yi Hang-bok?" Yang Ho, the general of the rescuing forces, also continually referred to him for advice and counsel. He lived to see the troubles in the reign of the wicked Quang Hai, and at last went into exile to Pukchong. When he crossed the Iron Pass near Wonsan, he wrote, "From the giddy height of the Iron Peak, I call on the passing cloud to take up a lonely exile's tears in the folds of its feathery shroud, and drop them as rain on the palace gates, on the king and his shameful crowd." on the king and his shameless crowd. Author's note: the story. During the Japanese War in the reign of Sunjo, the Mings sent a great army that came east, drove out the enemy, and restored peace. At that time, the general of the Mings informed his Korean Majesty that the victory was due to the help of Chun, the god of war. This being the case, said he, you ought not to continue without temples in which to express your gratitude to him. So they built him houses of worship and offered him sacrifice. The temples built were one to the south and one to the east in the city. In examining sites for these, they could not agree on the one to the south. Some wanted it nearer the wall, and some further away. At that time, an official, Yi Hangbok, was in charge of the conference. On a certain day, when Yi was at home, a military officer called and wished to see him. Ordering him in, he found him a great strapping fellow, splendidly built. His request was that Yi should send out all his retainers till he talked to him privately. They were sent out, and then the stranger gave him a message. After he had finished, he said goodbye and left. Yi had at that time an old friend stopping with him. The friend went out with the servants when they were asked to leave, and now he came back again. When he came in, he noticed that the face of the master had a very peculiar expression, and he asked him the reason of it. Yi made no reply at first, but later told his friend that a very extraordinary thing had happened. The military man who had come and called was none other than a messenger of the god of war. His coming too was on account of their not yet having decided in regard to the site of the temple. He came, said Yi, to show me where it ought to be. He urged that it was not a matter for the time only, but for eternities to come. If we do not get it right, the god of war will find no peace. I told him in reply that I would do my best. Was this not strange? The friend who heard this was greatly exercised, but Yi warned him not to repeat it to anyone. Yi used all his efforts, and at last the building was placed on the approved site where it now stands. Author's note: Imbang. If you enjoyed this reading, I would love if you could click the subscribe button below, like and share. Thank you so much. Vanishing Folklore and Beliefs.